This is the Wednesday, August 2nd morning session of the Portland City Council. Good morning, everybody. Carla, could you please call the roll?
Saltzman?
Here.
Udaley?
Here.
Fritz?
Here.
Fish? Wheeler?
Here. The purpose of council meetings, we reread this at every meeting, is to do the city's business, including hearing from the community on issues of concern. In order for us to hear from everyone and to give due consideration to matters before the council, we must all endeavor to preserve the order and the decorum of these meetings. To make sure that the process is clear for everyone, I want to review some of the basic guidelines, which I hope will help everybody feel comfortable, welcome, respected, and safe at the meeting, and to also ensure that decorum is maintained. There are two opportunities for public participation. First, we have an opportunity for people to sign up for communications to briefly talk about any matter that they'd wish to address. These items must be scheduled in advance with the clerk's office. Second, people may sign up for public testimony on the first readings of reports, resolutions, and ordinances. If you sign up, your testimony must address the matter being considered at the time. Please state your name for the record. We do not need your full address. If you're a lobbyist, we do need to know that. And if you're representing an organization, please identify the organization. Individuals have 3 minutes to testify unless otherwise stated. Sometimes if we have lots and lots of people signed up, we have to shorten that. Doesn't look like that'll be a problem this morning. When you have 30 seconds left, the yellow light on that box will go on and you'll hear a beep. When your time is up, the red light will go on and you'll hear more beeping. Please do not interrupt other people's testimony. Everybody has a right to be heard in this chamber, but let's do it in the proper order of things. If you interrupt testimony or if you interrupt council deliberations, you will be given a warning. If you do not seize that, you will be asked to leave. And if you do not leave, you are subject to arrest for trespassing. If you want to show your support, thumbs up. If you don't like something, thumbs down works. It just keeps things moving if people aren't verbally shouting and whatnot. So that is it. With that lengthy introduction, Carla, please call the communications item number 85.
Mayor, I apologize for being late for the roll call. If I could be noted as present.
Yes,
Thank you, Carla.
Commissioner Fish has arrived. Duly noted. Thank you, Commissioner. 853.
Request of Kristen Bowling to address council regarding police accountability and community rights.
Good morning.
My name is Kristen Bowling, and I represent Empower Portland. This is the fourth time a member of our group has addressed council this year. Council members and Mayor Wheeler, I am here today to submit that the City of Portland is conducting a campaign of terror against activists. The dictionary definition of terror is the use of violence and threats to intimidate or coerce, especially for political purposes, and that certainly describes what is happening to us right now. I also submit to you that in addition to the members of our community that have already lost their lives at the hands of white supremacists and police in the past year, the logical result of this campaign of terror is, 1, the ruining of lives with long prison sentences on trumped-up politically motivated felony charges, and 2, the death or permanent maiming of one or more of the defenders of this community that you see before you today. You're allowing our rights and protections to be dismantled while we are simultaneously targeted by a violent and completely unchecked police force. How else could this possibly end without effective resistance on the part of our elected officials? People in this audience today have been repeatedly assaulted by chemical and impact weapons on Portland streets. An ever-expanding arsenal is deployed earlier in an event in the context of conflicting instructions without escape routes and used indiscriminately against anyone and everyone. Empower Portland's Nate Cohen addressed you back in April with a detailed report on the dangers of the weapons being used then, and it's only gotten worse. At the same time, police are increasingly targeting neutral observers that are there to ensure public safety and accountability. Street medics, journalists, legal observers, and cop watchers have all been assaulted, harassed, and detained this year at street events. The attacks on these protections is a particularly salient harbinger of fascism. Combined with the wholly inadequate and politically biased medical response by Portland Fire at crowd events, we are losing the last line of protections we have to preserve our rights and access the medical attention we need when police attack us. EMTs in riot gear ride the rails with cops, their faces covered and uniforms barely distinguishable, while we wash the chemical weapons out of the eyes of our comrades. Don't be fooled. Militarized medics were never what Empower Portland asked for. I also submit that this campaign serves the political purpose of maintaining a racist status quo, since Portland area law enforcement targets left protesters while protecting and colluding with the racist right. Why else would police stand with their backs to right-wing white supremacist militia while assaulting the left with chemical weapons? Why else would PPB conduct a training to recruit the right to collect intelligence on the left on 82nd Avenue before their march of terror through the heart of the immigrant community? Add to this the increasing surveillance of activists through drones, constant police filming, the infiltration of crowds, and an officer whose job is to do nothing but follow up on surveillance after protests, and the logical result is the increasing individual detainment, assault, arrest, and overcharging of individual activists, often weeks or months after an incident. How else can we explain these things but to conclude that there is a campaign of terror against us designed to suppress dissent and dissuade us from confronting those that threaten our community? Commissioners and Mayor Wheeler, you must stand with us to reverse this trend, this campaign of terror. We implore you. The activists before you right now love this city like no other. We are defending it with our liberty, our sanity, and our very lives. You must do more. Please stand to defend us by taking any of the actions I have listed in the email I will send to your office this afternoon. The liberty and future of our very city is at stake, for what befalls those on the margins is indeed what is in store for us all.
Thank you for your testimony. We appreciate it. Next item, please.
854, request of David Keefe Davis to address council regarding stalking of journalists, whistleblowers, and activists by city employees.
I don't see him. Next item, please.
Item 855, request of Jamie Burrows to address council regarding ongoing positive benefits from recreation, arbitration, and community benefits.
Good morning.
Good morning. So my name is Jamie Burrows. I'm a recreation coordinator at Mount Scott and then Creston Pool during the summer.
Thank you.
I've been working since 1999, so this is my 19th summer with Parks, the 9th that's full-time. And I just want to talk about what's happened over the last 4 years. Recreation has seen some huge changes in their staffing levels. We went from a workforce of about 80 full-time benefit employees. With the arbitration, that went up to about another 150. And then with the voluntary recognition that we experienced, we're looking at another 300 to 500 employees that will have the potential to have benefits, better wages, all really good things. The impact of this is what this has had on us is how we deliver our services. It's been pretty positive and noticeable. We now have the robust workforce of benefited represented employees working at living or near living wages. Instead of the high turnover rate we've experienced in the past, we now have employees that are celebrating annual anniversaries, 1 year, 2 year, 3 year, really long-standing employees. The impact this had is, or that this has had on our patrons is continuity. So I just came from our weekly staff meeting. We have probably 60 to 70 lifeguards that train on a weekly basis for about an hour in the morning. And looking at them, I realized that over the 19 years that I've been working for Parks, I've watched them grow up. So I taught their swim lessons, then I moved on to coach their swim teams, then I trained them to be lifeguards, and for a lot of them, I'm their first boss. So then they go on after that to become, they go on to other jobs, they become productive members of society. It's really great to be able to watch that cycle and that continuity of patrons. I get to know entire families. Like, we run out of families. I went through all their siblings, had all 5 of them, 6 of them, and now we're moving on to their cousins, their friends, etc. So it's a really neat cycle to watch. With that, those families then become employees, and that furthers the sense of community that is important to so many people in Portland. So we just wrapped up our last contract negotiations. I'm an active member of our union. I negotiated the last 2 contracts. I'm on the LMBC, the Task Matrix, the E-Board, and I'm a steward for our union. So while it's easy to say that no contract is going to have what everyone wants on both sides, but this is a pretty good contract, and I really appreciate the efforts that we've had both on the union and as you as commissioners and the mayor to further those relationships that we have so we can have a good contract like this. It really is important. Some people haven't seen wage increases in well over 20 years. So we get our COLAs, but it's only what is done by the CPIW, so it's not an actual wage increase. So we received that this year, and that really tells us that you value us as employees, that you value us as much as we value ourselves and as much as the public values us. So thank you, I really appreciate it.
Mayor, can I just make one
Commissioner
comment?
Fish, you bet.
First, thank you for joining us today, and congratulations on the contract. But I think there are now 3 former and current Parks Commissioners on the council. We had 4 in the last council. And I'm reminded that one of the most harrowing moments in our respective leadership is when we hear about an incident in a pool. And what the public doesn't really maybe know as much about is that with lots of people in our pools, the chances that a child or an older adult or someone would be in distress, from time to time happens. And the good news is our highly trained and highly experienced lifeguards on a regular basis make life and death decisions.
I do.
And I think we would be remiss if we didn't communicate our deep gratitude to the work of the lifeguards in our various rec centers.
Thank you.
Commissioner Fritz.
I just got back from spending some time with my family in England, and I just want to thank you for coming in on this first morning I have back to remind me why I like coming to work. And thank you for your partnership and that of Labourers 483.
Thank you, I appreciate it.
So my second boss
Yeah.
was somebody just like you. My first boss was the head of a kitchen where I was a dishwasher for 2 years, which was definitely the hardest job I've ever had, and I really mean it. That was a character-building experience. But working as my recollection is I had to get a water safety instructor certification. So people who are actually lifeguarding and teaching swim lessons have to go on and get additional certifications.
Yep.
And teaching little kids how to swim. Kids who are often afraid of the water, have never been in the water before, with their parents watching you like a hawk to make sure that you're treating their precious little one well, was a tremendously gratifying experience and very important. And I remember the woman who I worked for was just wonderful. And so as you were talking, I was thinking of the opportunities you're opening up for young people in our community, and I was one of those young people, and I'm really appreciative of it. So thank you for coming in and sharing a positive story. We appreciate it. Next item, please, Carla.
856, request of Jennifer Burt, to address council regarding positive outcomes of the recreation arbitration and Portland's rising cost of living.
Good morning.
Good morning. Thank you for having me. My name is Jenny Burt. I'm a recreation coordinator too for Citywide Recreation. And I've been employed with Portland Parks and Recreation for over 18 years, just like Jamie. I'm also an active member of Laborers Local 483, have representing recreation on the past 2 contract negotiation teams, the recreation arbitration negotiation team, and serving as a shop steward as well as our executive board. As you may recall, I sat before you in February of 2016 giving testimony in support of the recreation agreement reached by Portland Parks and Recreation Management Team and Local 483, which was a direct result of the recreation arbitration ruling of May of 2015. I'm pleased to report that that agreement continues towards achieving its goal of setting clear, bright lines for the work of all recreation employees, and so far has been preventing further slide of represented work onto casual staff. It resulted in the creation of 150 benefited positions, returning many of the jobs lost to budget cuts over the years, and finally providing living wages to those employees, some who had been picking up the slack for years. The agreement also brought the opportunity of voluntary recognition of a new classification of recreation workers, which will now see approximately 300 additional employees be recognized and better compensated for their commitment and dedication to the mission of our Bureau and the city we all serve. I come before you today to acknowledge and thank you for the recognition, support, and commitment you have shown our bargaining team, and the hundreds of employees who will, for the first time, benefit from better wages and working conditions through the REC arbitration agreement and our most recent, soon-to-be ratified collective bargaining agreement. I believe this is a testament to your commitment as a council towards making the City of Portland a model employer. However, while it is true that we have made great strides forward to achieving that goal, there is still work yet to be done. There are still countless recreation and city employees living below the poverty level, struggling to make ends meet, while the cost of living in our city continues to skyrocket. Although we are truly moving in the right direction, many of our represented employees still today can't afford to live in the limits of the city that they serve. It is my hope that Local 483 and the city can continue working together positively to ensure that someday soon all City of Portland employees have the opportunity to achieve a living wage and the City of Portland achieves the goal of being a true model employer. Thank you, Mayor Wheeler and Commissioners, for your time and consideration today and for your ongoing commitment to work collectively and collaboratively with us towards reaching agreements that help make the City of Portland a better place to live and work. And to Commissioner Fritz, thank you for your continued encouragement and support of all recreation staff. By working together, we truly can achieve great things. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Fritz.
Thank you so much for taking the time to come in today. And I also want to recognize your entire union bargaining teams over the years. Anna Kenwick, Mayor, and your staff have been amazing. Harry Auerbach, lately retired from the City Attorney's Office.
Yes.
I'm really happy that we are moving towards paying such wonderful employees the wages and benefits they deserve. Thank you.
No worries. Thank you.
Thank you for coming in.
Thank you very much.
Next item, please.
857, request of Sheikh Sharif to address council regarding community prosperity.
Nobody appears to be here for 858. Next item, please. Actually, let's go to the, no, we can do it. Time's certain. Let's do 858. Go ahead and read it, please.
Proclaim August 2017 to be International Rose Test Garden Centennial Month in Portland.
Colleagues, I have a proclamation, and then we have a couple of guest speakers, Kimberly James and Harry. If you are here, you're certainly welcome to come on up while I read the proclamation. Whereas the International Rose Test Garden had its beginnings in Washington Park, Portland, Oregon in 1917 as a sanctuary for European roses threatened by World War I. And whereas the International Rose Test Garden yearly hosts over 700,000 visitors from around the world. And whereas the International Rose Test Garden is the oldest public rose test garden in the United States. Whereas the International Rose Test Garden was recognized in 2006 with the Garden of Excellence Award from the World Federation of Rose Societies. And whereas the International Rose Test Garden represents a strong relationship between hundreds of partners, volunteers, the City of Portland, and Portland Parks and Recreation and the public. Whereas the International Rose Test Garden is a source of pride for all Portlanders and showcases a unique role in Portland's history. Whereas the City of Portland is looking forward to the next 100 years of roses at the International Rose Test Garden, now therefore I, Ted Wheeler, Mayor of the City of Portland, Oregon, the City of Roses, do by here proclaim August 2017 to be International Rose Test Garden Centennial Month in Portland and encourage all residents to observe this month. And we'll go ahead and turn it over to our guest speakers.
All right, thank you so much.
Thanks, Kimberly.
My name is Kimberly Bowen. I'm the president of the Friends of the International Rose Test Garden. So thank you, Mr. Mayor and Commissioners. Thank you for having us today and for honoring the International Rose Test Garden in its centennial year. The Rose Garden is an icon of the city's moniker, the City of Roses. I represent the Friends of International Rose Test Garden and the hundreds of volunteers devoted to maintaining and enhancing the Rose Garden. A number of them are here with us today. We contribute thousands of hours deadheading. That's pruning spent roses, guiding public tours, and answering questions about roses. We enjoy the tremendous support and partnership of your Parks and Recreation Department, represented here by Curator Harry Landers and Land Stewardship Manager James Allison. We also have a lot of other Portland Park and Rec folks here today to hear this proclamation. Thank you for your efforts on behalf of the City of Roses. The Friends will continue our devotion to another 100 years of blooms.
Thank you, Kimberly.
Good morning, Mayor Wheeler, city councilors, city commissioners, sorry. Thank you for your support of our world-class park system that has over 144 developed parks, 73 natural areas, more than 53 community gardens. These are exceptional and essential community assets. The Centennial Celebration recognizes many efforts and contributions of many hands across many decades. I want to thank you for your efforts, and I want to thank our partners. Portland Parks and Recreation has more than 200 friends and partners, organizations that define our work and make that work happen. In the spirit of collaboration and goodwill, Portland Parks and Recreation is sponsoring a community day, a free community day at the Garden on Saturday, August 26th. This is going to be a full day from 11 a.m. to 8:30 p.m., where we welcome all Portlanders into the international spirit of this garden and this special place. This day will feature art, music, and other performances from Portland's many cultures. And the two highlights I look forward to most are art-inspired work from more than 60 Portland Public Schools students and rose-flavored ice cream inspired by our City of Roses. Thank you again.
Thank you, we appreciate it. Good morning.
Good morning. I have the great honor of being with the garden for almost a third of its life. It seems kind of hard to believe now, but I have the privilege of taking the garden to its international standing. So we're known throughout the world. That's one very proud thing that I can take with me as I retire. Thank you.
Thank you. And Harry, just consider yourself lucky that it was the last third of its life as opposed to the first third of its life.
You're darn right.
Very good. Well, thank you. And colleagues, we've had a request to have a photo with Kimberly and Harry and James.
Before we do that, could I just
Yes,
say
certainly.
thank you to all three of you for being here this morning and celebrating the centennial. I also want to thank the taxpayers of Portland and the voters of Portland who approved the Fix Our Parks bond measure. And so in addition to the beautiful flowers, we now have an accessible walkway that will make a huge difference to everybody feeling welcome and being welcome in the garden. So I hope that people will come to the big celebration on 26th, but also now is a very good time to go out there and just walk amongst the flowers and take the time to smell the roses. And thank you, Harry Landers, for all your work.
Thank you.
It's gonna be a little awkward trying to do it next to the table there, so let's.
Why don't I stand beside him here if I could for a second?
Is it a fair question to ask what your favorite rose is? Or is that like, what's my favorite child? Okay, I wasn't gonna, I figured to say that. What day it is?
Is everybody ready? 1, 2, 3. Thanks, guys.
Congratulations, everybody. Appreciate it. Thank you very much for your work. Thanks. Thanks very much.
What do you think we're going to do now? I'll just roll with the punches. It's not 10.
Okay, can we go to the next one? Yeah, we'll have to. Moving to the consent agenda, we can't quite go to the next time certain. Carla, which items have been pulled off of the consent agenda?
861, 862, 863, and 865.
And 865. Could you please call the roll on the remainder of the consent agenda?
Saltzman,
Aye.
Udaly. Fritz.
Aye.
Fish.
Aye.
Wheeler.
Aye. The consent agenda is adopted, and I just want to make one note, 860 was not pulled, is that correct?
Correct.
I just want to note that this was a grant to Work Systems, Inc. for the Summer Youth Program. I want to just acknowledge the City Council's leadership on the issue of summer employment for youth. We allocated $550,000 through our budget to support this in conjunction with Multnomah County and other partners. Obviously, engaging young people during the summer and encouraging them to think about different career and higher educational opportunities has been a priority for this council. I just want to acknowledge that through the consent agenda, we are allocating those funds. Commissioner Daly.
I would just like to mention that we had the pleasure of having a Summer Works youth intern in our office. His name is Gabe. He's leaving tomorrow, and we're going to miss him. And thanks for this wonderful program.
Very good. Thank you, Commissioner. Item 861, please.
Authorize an intergovernmental agreement with Portland State University for $8,000 to provide funding for low-cost urban air quality sensor testing.
Colleagues, while staff is coming up, air quality sensors are another example of how we're moving Portland forward on protecting air quality in our neighborhoods. As you know, I and all of you are committed to improving air quality in Portland, and one way, in addition to monitoring, is potentially by pursuing a local air authority to protect our community. Our local air authority could monitor air quality and air toxics, set standards and issue penalties for violation. I am well aware that the state continues to push for higher standards and continues to push for funding. The legislature, despite the best efforts of our colleagues, particularly from the Portland delegation and our governor, they pushed hard to get that legislation through. Unfortunately, they were blocked by others who did not share their values to air quality in this region. So I'm eager for the Oregon legislature to move forward, and I'm particularly hopeful that we have an ambitious dirty diesel phase-out program. In the meanwhile, as you know, colleagues, I've requested that Portland should move forward and support a regional approach. And as you'll recall, our budget included funding in conjunction with Multnomah County to begin to lay out such a framework in the event that the state is not able to deliver on air quality. And I want to assure you that conversations are taking place with not only the governor's team and with legislative folks. We have also had brief conversations at this point, but conversations nonetheless with LRAC, which is Lane County's regional air program, as well as folks in Metro and elsewhere that we believe have an interest in this, and we will continue that approach. So sorry for the long soliloquy,
So, Mayor,
but I wanted you to be aware of that. Commissioner Fish.
Thank you for those comments, because for a number of us, what we've read is in the paper, and we haven't had a chance to have this conversation with you. What I think we ought to plan to do, Mayor, because the council has actually not taken this issue up yet, is schedule a work session for the purpose of laying out what the options are, who our partners are and where they stand and how we pay for it. And I think there's some big questions the council needs to address before we start putting the framework in place. And it's particularly important to me that we're working in lockstep with the county. And so I want to hear from the county leadership about where they are, since this is a regional approach. So are you planning to bring something to us early this fall?
It is premature at this point because there is no framework to bring forward. We're in the early stages of investigation. We're looking at other models around the state and around the country that have been successful. We are a long way off from who is in and who is out, and we're a long way off from determining how such a regional air authority, if created, would be financed or funded. That being said, as we all remember, it wasn't that long ago when town halls were being packed across this city with residents expressing legitimate concern about air quality in the Portland area, and there's been some press out there to suggest that Portland has some of the worst air quality in the United States. And as you know, on issues like dirty diesel, we're actually way behind our colleagues in the states of Washington and California. And I do agree with those who say the state is the appropriate area for this to take place, and that the DEQ is the appropriate agency for this to happen. But I cannot simply punt the responsibility for air quality to the state or to the DEQ if they're not actually doing the testing and the remediation and the penalties. And so I think there are people, I believe our county chair is quoted in the papers saying she does not support a local approach, but knowing that papers are somewhat imprecise in terms of their statements and approaches, there will probably be some point at which, if there isn't action at the state, we will have to take action. Okay. It will be our obligation so to do. But we're quite a ways from making that decision. But I do think we need to lay the foundation.
But I think we also have to calibrate community expectations. And the reality is that on a daily basis, we're faced with the challenge of having either a federal government, a state government, and in some instances a regional partner not addressing a challenge that we think is urgent. And what we cannot do in each and every instance is simply create a Portland-only solution because at some point we don't have the resources or the capacity. The question of whether the state needs to step up and do more, I think, is the question before us right now. And I'm very interested, since a prior council launched this initiative, right, I'm very interested in knowing what our options are in that regard. I do think we have to be careful about saying that we're prepared early in the negotiations to go it alone, because what we are saying is we're going to shift the burden and the cost to local taxpayers when invariably the issues we're dealing with have either a state or a national component. And so that's a tactical question. There's no dispute about the goal here. But I am concerned about us setting expectations. And as you know, coming out of our most recent budget, we're still scrambling to find money to fill potholes, to provide services for homeless people, to do a whole host of things. So I want to manage expectations. There's no question this council has said clean air matters. And we have launched a process to investigate a regional authority. But frankly, I don't want to let DEQ off the hook prematurely. And if we start talking about moving forward, we're essentially letting them off the hook. And damn it, that they have primary jurisdiction. And it may be that we have some kind of parallel efforts. But when we are unable to meet other urgent needs right now from a budgetary point of view, I want to be very clear about setting expectations about what we can and can't do.
That is fair. And I don't conceptually disagree with anything you've said, Commissioner Fish. I will say this. As far as I understand the process to this point, the roadblock is not other governmental jurisdictions. The roadblock are private sector advocates who believe the standards that are in place are too stringent. And the public, and I certainly do not agree with that. I do not believe the standards are too stringent. And I actually like putting the leverage on the table of the City Council because historically, I think our environmental standards will be more stringent than what the DEQ might come up with. So I will let our private sector partners chew on that a little bit.
Well, and Mayor,
in addressing your second issue, saying we are absorbing the cost and the burden, we're already absorbing the cost and the burden in the form of externalities. In the absence of the state providing a rigorous framework, we don't know who's polluting, we don't know where they're polluting, and the cost is actually being borne by people who live in the community. It is a shift of externality costs onto the people who live in this community. And what the community has told me in no uncertain terms is they're done with it. So I agree with you. We do not have the capacity today to lay up an entirely new bureaucracy, nor do I want to. And I'm on the record many, many times over the course of my run for office saying that. But at some point, just as we stepped into the housing fray ahead of the state in order to put leverage on the state and in order to take care of the situation in our community, air quality seems every bit as important to me as affordable housing. And so I'd use exactly the parallel argument we used to pass a relocation ordinance.
Well, let me just close by saying that the context for this discussion is a shared sense of frustration on this council.
Agreed.
That on issues we care about, we often find ourselves preempted by the state legislature, abandoned by the federal government, overturned by LUBA, and unclear about how we go forward. So this is the context, and I applaud, Mayor, your sense of righteous indignation about how we approach this problem. I guess I go back to what I said earlier, which is, since we are investigating other regional authorities, since we are talking about a possible regional approach, I think bringing the council along early on in terms of potential frameworks and what this might look like is useful. We have to make very tough choices about lots of core priorities, and they are mounting. And if this becomes an urgent priority that we're going to establish, staff, and fund, I think the sooner we identify what that looks like and what some of the options are, the better. There is no quarrel on this council about the need to attack the air quality issue. I think the question about, at the federal, state, and local level, who does what and who pays for it is an important question, and I for one, do not want to let excuse me, people off the hook.
And in that, we are in full and rigorous agreement, Commissioner
There we go.
Fish. Very good.
There we
So
go.
yes is the answer to your question. Sorry. Hi. Good morning.
Good morning. Thanks for the lively discussion on air
That's
quality.
what we like.
My name is Christine Kendrick with the Bureau of Planning and Sustainability. I'm here to talk to you about this ordinance to authorize an intergovernmental agreement with Portland State University to support low-cost air quality sensor testing. This sensor testing is part of an ongoing project aimed at evaluating and deploying low-cost air quality sensors. The goal of the project is to understand how we might be able to use lower cost sensors to better understand air quality at the roadsides and at higher spatial resolutions across the landscape, and also temperature and climate effects as well. Portland State, with this IGA, would provide testing and evaluation of sensors by exposing them to known concentrations of gases and particles, and also while changing temperatures and relative humidity. The second stage of this test is to deploy the sensors at Department of Environmental Quality's Southeast Lafayette Station. So we're doing a multi-stage validation study. And then this work was supported by 2 different grants received by the city, National Institute of Standards and Technology, RSCT grant, and then also 11th hour project funding from Forth, formerly known as Drive Oregon. And Portland State was originally named as partners in those grant applications.
Very good. Colleagues, any further? Commissioner Fritz?
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you for your work, and I'm very happy that we are looking at this. $8,000 seems to be fairly inexpensive for a nice study by Portland State University, so I appreciate that. As we all know, today's going to be a very hot day, and indeed TriMet is offering free rides all day to help people not drive. It seemed incongruent to me when I got off the bus and saw a person using a leaf blower to literally blow around about 3 leaves, making a lot of noise. So there may be things that we can do, Mayor, aside from the big picture regional air quality. We haven't done leaf blowers for quite some time at the council. But things like that would further our climate action change plan and be things that we can do without getting into the whole wash of what's happening at the state, what's at Metro. So I hope we can consider that.
Well said. Thank you.
Thank you.
Colleagues, any other? Commissioner Saltzman?
So I thought the council, like 2 years ago, purchased some mobile air quality monitoring devices. What happened to those?
Mobile air quality devices? I don't know about mobile. We do have some instruments that were set up in stations at 2 different intersections. So right now the ones that are operating is at Southeast 122nd and Division. And that's also, those are more laboratory grade or federal regulation grade instruments, so not low cost. But those give us data points to be able to test some of these lower cost sensors. The idea there is that it's so hard to get air quality data at a high spatial resolution. We only have 1 monitoring station for all of the city of Portland. So if we can learn how to use lower cost sensors and calibrate them against better measurements, we can get more data across the city to understand the spatial distribution.
Yeah, I'm really puzzled because I recall the debate. It was a pretty well-focused debate, and it was all about these mobile air quality sensors that PSU folks could take over to Precision Castparts, and then they could take it over to North Portland. So you don't know anything about that?
I might be also referencing the work for the XRF, which was to do air toxics mobile measurements, and that was actually to produce the instrument to analyze.
Right.
And then using samplers that they already had in the Portland State University lab, they're able to go out and collect those particle samples and go do that analysis. So that's for air toxics. And I apologize.
That's what I'm thinking of.
Yes, and I apologize, I didn't say earlier, these sensors are for transportation-related pollutants.
Oh, okay.
So at the urban roadside, at intersections and bus
Maybe I-
stops.
Maybe I drifted, given the debate going on here, maybe I drifted to the air toxic right away. So,
Commissioner
sorry
Fish.
about that. Yeah.
Commissioner Fritz, I'm glad you raised the question of the leaf blowers, and I have two experiences with them. I live in a big apartment building, and on the weekend, I get woken up on the morning because there's a particular neighbor that starts blasting their leaf blower, and it echoes all up through the Vista St. Clair, presumably waking everybody up. And then there's a coffee place at the end of the street. There's a gentleman in the morning who fires it up and creates the mother of all dust storms as people are sitting outside drinking, taking coffee or just enjoying the day. And I've always wondered, what is really going on here with those things? And then I guess the science of it is they're big polluters as well, and not just noise pollution, but air pollution. So perhaps we could take a look at that.
Right on. Is there any public testimony on this item?
I didn't have a sign-up sheet, but Mr.
Very
Lightning
good.
pulled it.
I'm sorry?
Mr. Lightning left it.
Okay, very good. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good morning.
My name is Lightning. I represent Lightning Super Watchdog X. One of the reasons why I pulled this item is I wanted to have a clear understanding. When we're reviewing the IGA, you have a lot of terms such as on number 8, confidentiality, you have also copyright. You have also that this information will be given only to the sponsor, which is the City of Portland. I want to have a clear understanding on this information that the public, the general public will have access to this information. As you know, I have done communication on when we had the daycare center located us next to that bus stop. We can do certain things to where we can have situations like that not happening. We can have a 1,000-foot distance from any bus stop where the diesel particulates are going up into the air and maybe drift over. Also, again, a great point on the leaf blower. One of my biggest concerns is that when I walk down the sidewalks, when they're using those, if there are diesel particulates that have floated out on the sidewalks and they begin to blow that up into the air again, we need to have more research on that to make sure that the people that are walking on these sidewalks aren't put into a dangerous situation, which I think they are. I believe they are. We need more research, again, on this type of testing to be able to look at that and say, let's not have that leaf blower used at least a certain time when there's a lot of people on the sidewalks. And so there are certain things that can be implemented. There are things that should be implemented. And again, my position on all of these situations is, again, to focus on the fossil fuel subsidies, begin aggressively taking those away from them and transferring those into other areas. We weren't able to keep the Paris Accord in place, but let's go after the fossil fuel subsidies right now and begin to transfer funding in other areas to focus on the clean air aspect of this city. And again, the diesel particulates are my biggest concern this time. I want more aggressive attention placed on that. I want to monitor the testing, and I want to have access to this testing as a private individual, as the public. It does not say that in your agreement. Everything is confidentiality, everything is copyright, everything is access to the sponsor. I want to see in these agreements that the public will have access to the information provided by this test that is going to be done. Thank you.
Thank you. Call the roll.
Saltzman,
Aye.
Udaly,
Aye.
Fritz.
Aye.
Fish,
Aye.
Wheeler.
Aye, the ordinance is adopted. We'll go back to the time certain, item 859, please.
Appoint Francesca Gambetti and Peter Platt to the Prosper Portland Board for terms to expire August 1, 2020.
Colleagues, we're fortunate to have two excellent candidates for the Prosper Portland Board of Commissioners. They come from very different backgrounds, but share a commitment to our city and using their talents and their expertise to make Portland a better place to live for all of our residents. I want to thank Peter Platt and Francesca Gambetti for your willingness to make a significant commitment in times of volunteering your energy to prosper Portland and its goal to build an equitable economy here. We have had requests in the past from people who are appointed to important commissions such as this to be present. We appreciate it, knowing you're both really, really busy. But we are hoping you could tell us a little bit about yourselves and why you want to be on the Prosper Portland Board, what you think some of the most important challenges are ahead. And Kimberly, if you want to come up as well, Director Branham from Prosper Portland is here as well. Good morning. I won't put you on the spot, but if you wanted to say anything, certainly.
Good morning, Mayor Wheeler
Morning.
and Commissioners. My name is Francesca Gambetti. I started my career as a project manager at Shields Oblitz Johnson nearly 20 years ago. I've worked in a variety of projects throughout the city over those years that were designed to strengthen communities, expand housing opportunities, and demonstrate sustainable building practices. I worked on a number of complex mixed-use projects, including the Hollywood Library and Bookmark Apartments in Northeast Portland, Museum Place in downtown. I have been involved in a number of nonprofit projects, such as the Artist Repertory Theater, the YWCA, and Mercy Corps. Just last year, I completed a couple of particularly rewarding projects. We completed the construction of Open School East, which is a really fantastic program that serves students that aren't succeeding in the traditional public school system. The organization has been operating with great success for nearly 50 years out of North Portland, and with this new school has now expanded to the east side in Gresham, largely in response to the shifting demographics of the region. Last year, I also worked on a project with A Home for Everyone, Transition Projects, Colas Construction, and MBA Architects. We transformed a warehouse on Southeast McLaughlin into the Willamette Shelter, the Willamette Center's homeless shelter. This was a small project in terms of development scale, but had tremendous social impact. So it was something that I was really proud to be a part of. Through all these years, I've gained a deep understanding of all aspects of project development, including acquisition, financing, community outreach, as well as the design, permitting, and construction process. I'm hopeful that these skills and my perspective will be an asset to Prosper Portland. I believe deeply in the work that Prosper Portland is doing and in the direction that Kimberly is taking the organization. I think they're demonstrating a real commitment to equitable economic development and creatively expanding opportunities for low-income and minority residents. So it's something I would be excited to be a part of, and I thank you for your consideration.
Very good, and if I could just mention a couple of other things that caught my attention on your resume. You've been volunteering, obviously, with Habitat for Humanity and Bicycle and Ideas for Kids Empowerment. Your company, which you're a co-founder of, commits a portion of your proceeds to benefit PAIR, an organization that we're all very familiar with and very happy with. It's a local organization that mentors homeless and transitional youth. You seem to have both head and heart. So we're really delighted that you're willing to step forward and make a commitment to this board.
Thank you.
Thank you for being here. Peter, tough act to follow.
Yes, indeed. Good morning,
Good
Mayor,
morning.
Commissioners. Good to see you. It's an honor to be considered for this very important position, helping oversee and guide Prosper Portland as it manages a significant pivot, both in funding and operations. I'm a small business guy. No two businesses or organizations are the same, but there are certain fundamentals of management and financial oversight that I'm going to bring with me to the board, as well as, of course, a street-level small business perspective. I think it's important and vital, as Kimberly has done most recently, to remind the public that our job is to ensure that a rising tide of economic development lift all boats, not just a few. And I look forward to working with my talented and accomplished board members, as well as the equally dedicated and professional staff at Prosper Portland, to ensure that that's the case. I will say, coming from a bilingual, bicultural family, I'm going to be especially sensitive and attentive to the voices from women and from community of color in our small business community. I think we have a thriving small business sector that really is at the heart of economic resiliency in our community. And I think the kind of work that Prosper Portland is doing to help underwrite the wealth creation that we want to see in our communities of color is exactly aligned with my values. I'd like to thank my parents in particular, because they represent to me an example and demonstrate daily what the marriage of two cultures represents, and that it's greater than the sum of its parts. And that their devotion to public service and to our company's mission and to the values of cultural understanding are really my inspiration for being here. Thank you very much for the consideration.
Peter, we appreciate your being here, and Francesca as well. Kimberly, I don't know if you had anything you wanted to add.
Thank you, Mayor. Good morning. Oh, thank you, Mayor. Good morning. I think all I would add is that we are delighted that both Francesca and Peter have agreed to be considered for this. I've had an opportunity to understand the dedication that it is to be a volunteer member of the board. There's an adage that citizens are the riches of the city, and I think that citizen volunteers or resident volunteers are truly at that top in terms of what they are willing to dedicate. And so I appreciate in advance the leadership that I know each of them would put forward. So just really want to appreciate that. Thank you.
Kimberly, and I also just want to acknowledge and thank you for your leadership on the legacy project that was brought forth for the public yesterday. That was an historic move, and Prosper Portland, under your leadership, obviously played a very key role in all of that. So I want to thank you and your commitment to equitable prosperity. Colleagues, any comments or questions for Peter or Francesca?
I just have a comment, Mayor. First of all, thank you both for serving. This is comes close to being a thankless task, and you're going to have to manage this and the rest of your lives. So we are very grateful that you're stepping up and donating so much of your civic energy towards this. I want to just note three things that sort of touch on what you've each said, but I think are ongoing challenges. One is that how our neighborhood prosperity agenda benefits our local small businesses. Small businesses are the backbone of our community. In our neighborhoods, I think about 90% of them employ 5 or fewer people. So how do we keep our eye on the next headquarter business while also making sure that our neighborhood small business prosper? That's one of our challenges, and both of you sort of alluded to it in different ways. Second is, how do we bring art and culture into the urban renewal conversation? And artists and artist affordability and those issues, they are never going to be as important as the acute crisis of homelessness, the affordability challenge generally faced by renters and others. We understand that. But they are likewise impacted by what's going on in our city, and we are at risk of displacing a lot of creative people and also making it difficult for arts organizations to prosper. How might we use art and culture as part of our vision for urban renewal, particularly in places like Gateway and Lents that are still struggling to find an identity? I challenge and urge you to consider that, and also in the Central East Side. I think as you approach the ODOT blocks, there's a huge opportunity to think about art and makers in those. And the third question, and I guess this is mostly for Francesca, We do know that we're going to have fewer resources for affordable housing. Now, Prosper Portland is not the lead anymore. That's shifted. But for us to be successful, Prosper Portland and the Housing Bureau have to work very closely together. We will have fewer federal resources. We will have fewer state resources over time. The need is growing, and there's a limit to what we can do just on our own. So one of the questions on the table is, how might we rethink the way we build housing and develop housing to get more units? That's a very tricky conversation, because underlying that question is a values proposition about how much are we willing to sacrifice on the values side to get more product out the door. And you will be part of that conversation about green buildings, about sustainable architecture, about living wages, and about opportunity where we build. And I urge you to bring your values and your passion to that conversation, because we're at a critical watershed, and we have to get more units built. But the question will be, at what expense to the values that support the housing that we're building? And I, from your backgrounds and from what I know of your work, I think you're going to be two important voices in helping us shape that conversation. So 3 things to think about. And thank you again for your service.
Thank you, Commissioner. Commissioner Daly.
Commissioner Fish, you're not supposed to tell them about the thankless part up front. Haven't even approved them
Take the
yet.
vote, then we tell them.
Well, I just want to thank you for stepping up to serve our community. It's very heartening and hopeful to me to have 2 people with street-level experience and knowledge, as you mentioned. And as challenging and thankless as it may be sometimes, there is deep satisfaction in getting to have a hand shaping the future of our city. So, thank you. That's what I tell myself every night, at least.
Very good. Colleagues, I'll entertain a motion.
So moved.
We have testimony.
Oh, I apologize. We have public testimony on this item. Just cool your heels for a few minutes.
Michael W. Durrell.
I guess we should say MESD Commissioner Michael Durrell.
Yes, Director.
Director, excuse me.
Director. Hello, gentlemen and ladies. How are you doing? Came over here to say hello, and I first of all would like to address Commissioner Fish's recent, was it a groundbreaking, or is it actually finished, the project to recover gas? The natural gas project.
Oh, with our wastewater facility?
Yes, congratulations.
Thank you.
That's going to save a lot of carbon dioxide. And I wanted to thank you for speaking to the pollution issue. I'm one of the people that I've got less than 50% lung function, and I have an oxygen concentrator and tanks at home in my room. Which issue number are we on?
This is the appointments to the Prosper Portland Board.
8:59.
Yeah. I'm sorry. I got sleep apnea and it does off a little bit. You know what? I got on the wrong one. What I actually came here for was to speak about the water filtration plants. I'm sorry. I asked this, I thought I wrote on the wrong one.
Michael, that's at 2 o'clock.
Yeah, I know. I have a meeting with the superintendent at 1, so I wasn't able to do that.
Okay, we're only taking testimony right now.
Okay, I understand.
But if you have a statement to read this afternoon and give it to me, I'll make sure it goes into the record.
Okay, thank you.
Good, thanks, Michael.
Sorry about that.
Good, no worries. Good morning.
Good morning.
There you go.
My name is Lightning. I represent Lightning Super Watchdog X. Just to Mark Edlund and Tom Kelly, outstanding work. And again, on the new appointments, I think you're well qualified. I think you'll do very good. And you have some tough shoes to fill. And I'll be watching you as a watchdog very close. One of my issues, or one of my points I wanted to bring up again on the housing, the most vulnerable people in our city, the homeless, people that live below the poverty line. I'm hoping that Again, Prosper Portland will begin to look at following what Hawaii just did, passing House Bill 89, to begin a process on looking at the universal basic income for all through the United States. And I want this to be looked at very close to have an understanding. Everything we talk about is what this universal basic income plan can be implemented and help. We're talking housing, we're talking improved health, we're talking reducing the poverty level, we're talking all these areas, and we need to start focusing on that and having groups such as Prosper Portland, having communication with Elon Musk, having communication with Mark Zuckerberg, having communication with various people in Hawaii who are the first to begin to implement this with a work group. We need to start understanding that when we're talking the most vulnerable, when we're talking housing, what we need to understand at the end of the day, they don't have enough money to get into housing. They don't have enough money to buy that smartphone to have access to internet. They don't have enough money. That's what universal basic income comes into play for all people, nobody to be excluded, and that means universal basic income will be paying Bill Gates $12,000 to $15,000 a year, as well as that person on the sidewalk. So again, in my limited time here during public communication, when we're talking about the homeless, the most vulnerable, start focusing on that, at least take a look at it, and start having communication with people about it to have a better understanding. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Thank you. We have a motion from Commissioner Fish. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Commissioner Fritz seconds. Any further comments, colleagues? Please call the roll, Carla.
Saltzman,
Well, I want to also acknowledge and thank outgoing Prosper Portland commissioners, Tom Kelly and Mark Edlin. Tom served as the chair. They both made outstanding contributions to our city, and we appreciate their service. And I also want to welcome our new members, Francesca and Peter. I'm very impressed with your backgrounds, your statements today, and I think you're going to be just the right people at just the right time. So thank you very much for your willingness to serve. Aye.
Udaley,
Aye.
Fritz.
Well, thank you very much for the perspectives that you bring. I'm just reflecting on the Prosper Portland. I avoided a syntax there for not saying the old name. The board now, with Gustavo Cruz as president and Alicia Moreland-Capria and both of you, and I'm pop quiz mayor, who's the fifth member?
I'm sorry?
The fifth member of Prosper Portland.
Sorry, I was reading the next
Okay,
slide.
well-
I apologize.
Oh, of course, Willie Myers. Thank you.
Sorry, as presiding officer, I always try to stay
That was
2
cheating.
minutes ahead.
That was cheating.
Sorry.
Well, I just want to reflect that this is an amazingly diverse board who brings so many different perspectives, and I'm very excited to know that your backgrounds as well, and what you're going to be bringing to the commission and to the city as a whole. So thank you very much. Aye.
Fish,
I want to echo what my colleague said. I also want to thank the mayor and the mayor's office and Kimberly and her team who are charged with recruiting new members. People don't just drop from the sky, and this has been a successful recruitment as evidenced by the two people before us. I understand we're going to break with some tradition at PDC and start meeting at a local restaurant after hours, so thank you, Peter, for that act of generosity. You're probably the first restaurateur at this organization since Bud Clark was mayor and was overseeing it. Am I right on that? I think so. Kimberly, maybe? So it's about time we had a distinguished restaurateur on our panel, a business person. Thank you both for stepping up and doing it. And we have a lot of really difficult decisions to make as the city goes through growing pains. And you're going to be in a unique role where you get to help us get it right. And we look forward to working with you. So thank you. Aye.
Wheeler.
I just want to thank you both for stepping forward and again remind the public that these are volunteers and that this is a significant time commitment from two people who are very active and engaged in positive ways already in the community. So we're very, very lucky. We're fortunate to have people of this quality willing to step forward and take on this role. And absolutely, I want to echo Commissioner Saltzman's remarks about Mark Edlin and Tom Kelly, both who served this board with distinction. I have every confidence that you will continue a great tradition and continue to work with Director Branham and moving Prosper Portland into important new directions. So thank you for your leadership. The report is accepted. The appointments are approved. Thank you both very much. Thanks, Kimberly. We were halfway through the consent agenda item. I believe 862 is next, Carla, if I've got that right.
Yes.
Please read 862.
Authorize an intergovernmental agreement with Prosper Portland for fiscal year 2017-18 economic development activities for a total of $6,021,910.
Very good. Thank you. Good morning.
Good morning.
Good morning. And colleagues, if I could just make a brief introductory statement. This is already an issue which has been discussed in public forums as part of our budget process. This is actually the allocation of the general fund towards Prosper Portland for fiscal year 2017-18. So this is not a new item. This is the allocation. But with that little primer, good morning.
Good morning, Mayor Wheeler, Commissioners. I'm Tony Barnes, Budget Officer, Prosper Portland. The item before you is that annual intergovernmental agreement between Prosper Portland and the City of Portland. It includes the core key funding for building inclusive economy, both ongoing funding, as mentioned in the budget process, as well as one-time funding identified. Of the total contract of $6 million, approximately $5.5 million represents the ongoing funding and about $480,000 in one-time funds that was allocated through the budget process. Included in the contract are specific performance measures that we report on through the bump process, as well as year-end reporting for specific performance measures.
Colleagues, any questions on this item? Public testimony?
I didn't have a sign-up sheet, but Mr. Lightning pulled it.
Did you want to make a statement?
I'm just here to answer questions.
Very good.
What he said.
Yeah.
You can go ahead and have a seat, and if there's any follow-ups, we'll bring you up. Good morning.
Good morning. My name is Lightning. I represent Lightning Super Watchdog X. Again, from the entrepreneurship and the innovation by the money that you're proposing and already have approved, I understand that. I agree with all the areas that you're going into. And one of the things, I guess, from my standpoint is that I had, the reason why I pulled this, I had a little bit of an issue on one of your items here, which basically was on the small business working capital. The Small Business Working Capital Program is utilized to increase access to capital for small businesses. The aim of the program is to promote wealth creation for small-scale, low-income immigrant and/or minority-owned firms, target businesses who aim to grow their businesses as such resources are prioritized. Now, the only concern I had on this is that you had a number there of, and I think you know what I'm talking about, of 51,000, where on these other programs, the numbers were quite a bit higher. We're talking about a good amount of money that has been approved. And so I guess from my position, I'm hoping that this, to me, is such an important issue for the survival of these businesses, especially starting out and sustaining themselves. But we had such a low number there. And I'm hoping, number one, in the future, that number could increase. And maybe somebody here could explain why that number is so low to begin with when these other programs, as you can see, the numbers are quite a bit higher to begin with, and they have more businesses that are being provided this type of money. Thank you.
Thank you. I don't know if there's a response from the team on that.
Well, thank you. In response to the question, that line item was reduced in the last 2 budget cycles. However, it is paired with other dollars Prosper Portland has within its adopted budget for non-TIF funds to support the same programming. So there's, I think, several $100,000 in other non-general fund, non-TIF funds that it's paired with.
Very good. All right, thank you. Colleagues, any further questions, comments? Please call the roll.
Saltzman?
Aye.
Udaley?
Aye.
Fritz?
Aye.
Fish?
Just one historical note. It was, I believe, at the end of the Adams administration, and it had an impact with the coming in of the Hales administration, that this council voted to convert one-time money for economic development at what is now called Prosper Portland to ongoing. It created a bit of a delta in then Mayor Hales' first budget. But the idea was that we wanted Prosper Portland, then PDC, to have this very flexible general fund resource so they could do economic development citywide and not just in the 15% of the city governed by urban renewal districts. And so this is a commitment of general fund resources to economic development. And once upon a time, most of these dollars were one time, meaning they were quite vulnerable. So I was very pleased that we moved them to ongoing, and I'm pleased to support this ordinance. Aye.
Wheeler?
Aye, the ordinance is adopted. Thank you very much. I believe 863 was the next item.
Authorize charitable organizations eligible to participate in the city's 2018 charitable campaign and authorize exemptions from umbrella requirement for Portland Parks Foundation and Portland Fire Bureau Toy and Joy Makers.
Good morning.
Good morning. Happy to be here. I'm Jane Brayton, and I manage the OMF Business Operations Division. We're here today to ask for authorization for our next city charitable campaign. That campaign is set to begin in September and run through the first part of October. That's our annual effort to raise money for a lot of different charities. So we received 15 applications for our charitable campaign this year, and our advisory committee, made up of representatives that the council appoints, has recommended approval of all of them. This ordinance would approve the 15 and also approve an exemption from the umbrella requirement in code for 2 of our charitable organizations, Portland Parks Foundation and Portland's Fire Toy and Joy Makers. They have received your approval in the past, and they have a loyal following in our charitable donors, so we are asking for your approval again. These umbrella organizations and those 2 represent more than 600 charities, and we have about 600 employees who participated last year, giving $281,000 to charities through this campaign. They can use the payroll deduction process, and it really reflects an important way that employees can do charitable giving and perhaps do it at a higher level since they are doing a payroll deduction plan. So I have with me Kelly Ball, who managed that effort in her team, and we're happy to answer any questions that you have.
Very good. Good morning.
Good morning.
So did you say that 600 employees gave $281,000 in last year's campaign? Was that?
Those were our totals for last year.
Total. Is that about the total from year to year, or does it fluctuate a lot?
It seems to be bumping, it bumps up incrementally each year, but we're also recognizing that there are other ways that employees donate. They don't necessarily have to do that through the charitable campaign, so we're very careful to word that this is one way that they can participate.
Okay.
But it is fairly stable. Bumps up
Okay.
a little bit this way, that way.
Okay.
Commissioner Udaley?
I just have a couple clarifying questions since this has been pulled. Could you explain the selection process for this list, as well as why that umbrella requirement is there? Because I'm assuming the Parks Foundation and Toy and Joy Makers are nonprofits.
Yes.
They don't have fiscal sponsors. I think the umbrella thing is confusing.
And this was approved with, we can credit Mike Lindberg, former city commissioner, for actually creating the initial code for this campaign. I think the original intent of the umbrella organizations is that one of the things that our city campaign is different from what other people joining the city might expect is we have an incredible choice amongst our organizations. So the umbrella helps us be able to give employees a choice of 600 organizations rather than...
I see. I was reading that as if the organizations are the umbrella organizations, and then they dole out the, I got it. Okay.
Correct.
And so then what's the selection process like?
The selection process is that we have application materials online. We do marketing, certainly to all of our previous organizations, but we also get information from our advisory committee if we need to do some additional outreach. And we received 15 applications, and we're actually recommending all of them.
And what's the advisory body called?
We call it the City Charitable Campaign.
Okay, so it's just devoted to this.
It just comes together to, provide some oversight in reviewing the applications, make sure that we're meeting all of the code requirements, and that the council is assured that there was that additional review.
Great, thank you.
Very good. Colleagues, any further questions? Is there public testimony on this item?
Mr. Lightning pulled it.
Thank you. Good morning.
Good morning. My name is Lightning. I represent Lightning Super Watchdog X. Again, on your charitable campaign and the umbrella concept, I'm in total agreement. I think it's great. I think it's something really positive that you're providing. Now, where I have an issue here is on this ordinance today is that you are asked to authorize an exemption from the umbrella requirement for two different, the Portland Parks Foundation and the Portland Fire Bureau toy and joy makers. So you want an exemption from what I think is a great plan you put into place and have implemented in a positive manner. Now, here's my problem. Under Code Chapter 5.10, charitable organizations may only participate in the charity drive as a member of an umbrella organization and must be approved by City Council based on compliance with eligibility requirements set forth in Code Section 5.10.040. Portland Toy and Joy Makers and Portland Parks Foundation do not meet the requirements. However, both have participated in the previous 13 campaigns and both have requested to participate again. The Charitable Campaign Advisory Committee, comprised of representatives from each council office, recommend approving participation by these organizations. Again, there are other great organizations that I think could meet the requirements of the umbrella plan, and yet they're being denied that opportunity, and you're giving two exemptions to these groups here. Now, my only question is, why don't they meet the requirements, and why are you giving them two exemptions at this time, which I do not approve of? Thank you.
Is there a response to that?
I think one of the items that we covered was the applications that we received, so those were the ones that we received. I also, with having a little bit of background, Portland Parks Foundation and the Fire Bureau Toy and Joy are also affiliated with city bureaus and organizations, and they do activities that are very closely aligned with the missions of those organizations, and they do have now a very loyal donor base within our city employees. So I believe that that's why we have continued to recommend an exemption for those organizations. I Toy and Joy is small and may not have the infrastructure to meet the umbrella requirement to donate to 9 different organizations. And the Parks Foundation, you know, they've had some changes over the years, and they may elect to grow to meet that, or they may elect to continue an exemption. But we would also, of course, be willing to consider any other request for exemption and have the committee evaluate that, and are perfectly open to that.
So could I just ask a clarifying question? So these are the organizations that we're authorizing here are all of the organizations that applied?
Correct.
And of all of the so no organization has been excluded?
Correct.
So the question really before the council is, are we also willing to accept these 2 charitable organizations that don't meet the minimum threshold requirements that were previously established for charitable organizations? And if I can just paraphrase to make sure I got it, the argument that you're providing is A, they're affiliated with city bureaus, and B, they have successful operational histories. Is that a fair statement or no?
I would say the other thing is that they also meet all of the other requirements. So there's a requirement about their administrative costs per charity. There are other requirements, and these 2 meet all of them with the exception of the umbrella.
With the exception of the umbrella. Okay, very good. Colleagues, any further question? Commissioner Fritz?
Thank you, Matt. So potentially we could change the code and say and add bureaus, charities affiliated with city bureaus that also meet all the other requirements. That way we wouldn't have to keep doing an exemption every year.
We're certainly open to looking at a code refresh.
Something to consider. And I consider the Portland Parks Foundation is like an umbrella organization. It does fund lots of different projects all over the city in partnership with other nonprofits. So I'm very happy to vote for this ordinance.
Thank you, Commissioner.
I think we should also put a shout out for just the whole program, because once you sign up, the money mysteriously gets deducted from your paycheck, which is the easiest way to do charitable giving. So thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner.
Very good. Colleagues, any further comments? Please call the roll. Caller.
Saltzman?
Aye.
Udaly?
Aye.
Fritz?
Aye.
Fish?
Aye.
Wheeler?
Aye, the ordinance is adopted. And I believe the last consent item was 865. Is that correct?
Yes, correct. 865, authorize a grant agreement of $21,307 with Southwest Trails for the development of the Robert Gray Trail for the period of July 20, 2017 through December 31, 2017.
Carla, who pulled this?
I pulled it.
Commissioner Saltzman?
Thank you, Mayor. This grant to Southwest Trails PDX is a long time coming and will fund a volunteer project that I know all of our offices have heard about for a couple of years now. And that is the Southwest 25th Avenue, which is a classic Southwest Portland unimproved right-of-way that is used by numerous students and community members to move around the neighborhood and to get to school, get to Robert Gray School. Robert Gray Middle School is directly in the path of Southwest 25th Avenue, and where it crosses Beaverton Hillsdale Highway, a pedestrian signal and crosswalk exist. However, directly south of the Beaverton Hillsdale Highway it steeply drops down to the gully and creek that runs along the highway, and it is this location that the grant will fund a much-needed trail improvements, including stairs with handrails. Matt Grum of my office is here with some pictures to orient the council on exactly where this is and the need, and then we'll open it up for any testimony. So thank you. Matt, take it away.
Thank you, Commissioner, Mayor, Commissioner, Council. Good morning. Great to see us all together here. It's been a while. Matt Grum with Dan's office, and just some pictures here quickly to orient the council on what we're doing here. Here's a above shot of the middle school. You'll note on the cursor here, this is the highway, Highway 10 here, and this is the right-of-way that is unimproved. Get a little closer. You'll see the unimproved area comes here. This is a pretty steep little gully. Here's the crosswalk with the pedestrian signal that goes right up to the school. There's a shot of it as you're going to cross the highway. You're crossing it. You'll note here, there's a sign for the trail right here, and you drop down right after this guardrail. You can see that opening there at the guardrail, dropping down in there. This is my favorite shot of Assistant Director
Warner trying to go down it. He was embarrassed for me to show this, but I couldn't resist. There's a better shot of the steepness that we are going to improve here. There's a shot of the trail. And that's really what I wanted to orient you and hope to have your support.
Okay, thanks.
Very good. Commissioner Fritz?
I couldn't tell from the photograph. Is there a sidewalk on that side of Beaverton Hillsdale Highway?
There is not. There's a bike lane but no sidewalk.
And by memory, that's the Oregon Department of Transportation who's responsible for Beaverton Hillsdale?
Correct. It has just been repaved and restriped, which was a great project that PPOT was involved with ODOT, but it does not have sidewalks.
So potentially in our next legislative agenda, we should look at encouraging that to happen, because although the trail will be improved, it's a little nerve-wracking to realize that there's nowhere once you get down the hill.
Exactly. Very busy, too.
Is there any public testimony on this item?
I didn't have a sign-up sheet, but
Very good. Thank you. Come on up. Thanks, Matt. Anybody else want to testify on this? We'll close the list, please. Good morning.
Good morning.
Good morning, Mayor and Commissioners. My name is Glenn Bridger. I'm a resident of Southwest Portland, and I'm a member of the board of Southwest Trails PDX, and I'm here to speak on behalf of the board. Our leaders, Don Bach and Dave Manville, are traveling into cooler parts of our country right now. We are in support of this much-needed grant. This trail is really a backbone or a spine through many cultural, religious activities in Southwest Portland. There are very few ways to get through this area. The crossing of the headwaters of Fano Creek makes it more difficult, which you saw the picture of. We have on the north side of Beaverton Hillsdale Highway a number of churches, synagogues, and of course, very much the Robert Gray School. As we go south along on Southwest 25th and get down to Capitol Highway, we are in a cluster where Middleman Jewish Community Center, a couple of more synagogues and more churches are present, as well as a lot of housing complexes. So it is an important passageway for people who wish to worship and go to school. We need this for safety. You saw the pictures. We need it for safety. I myself have a problem with balance. I have not gone down to the actual crossing because I've been there many times. I don't go down there because it needs good steps. It needs the handrails. It needs to be safe. And we very much support that project. And this time, I'd like to let one of our volunteers who lives right along this corridor and has been doing a lot proceed. Andrea?
Yes. Hello. Good morning.
Morning.
My name is Andrea Wall, and first of all, I want to thank the City Council for approving on June 21st my grant for the Community Watershed Stewardship. And so I received an $8,000 grant, and I have been working with a very diverse group of community volunteers on the south end of this trail, up by Capitol Highway, removing invasive plants, planting native plants, providing stormwater management, and creating habitat. So I've been working with Solve and Stevens Creek Low Cross Housing and many community volunteers who all care about this trail. This is the way we get around. As mentioned, the last about 500 feet of this trail, which you saw pictures of, is unsafe, and Portland Public Schools has deemed it so unsafe that they bus the junior high school students, middle school students, from Stevens Creek to Robert Gray, rather than have them walk this stretch of trail. And also down in that ravine is a huge western red cedar tree that we're hoping will receive heritage status, and close to the headwaters of Fano Creek. So it's really kind of a special place down there, and we hope to do restoration work once it's safe. And when it is safe, it will provide a community trail that's a safe nature trail. It will give people an opportunity to get exercise, to get out in nature, And instead of the children being bused or driven to Robert Gray, they can walk, and that will relieve traffic congestion, pollution, and cost to the school district. Thank you.
Thank you all for your advocacy.
Very good. Colleagues, any further questions on this item? Thank you for your testimony. Carla, please call the roll.
Goes to a
I'm
second.
sorry, this is a non-emergency first reading of an ordinance. It
So in that
moves-
case, could I comment? Thank you.
Please comment.
I want to thank Glenn Bridger for your long-time support of volunteer activities in Southwest Portland, including being past president of the Southwest Neighborhoods Inc. board. Also, of course, kudos to Don Bach, who has been a champion for this project, as well as for trails throughout Southwest Portland. It's astonishing to me that for $21,000 and a little bit more, this path, a right-of-way, can be made safe. And so I particularly appreciate also the work that you've done at the legislature to make sure that there's immunity for mishaps on the construction after the trail's been constructed. I seem to remember that when this was approved in the budget, the principal of Robert Gray had fallen and broken her arm in this very spot. So I hope that she now knows that we are correcting it, even if a bit late for her safety. So thank you very much.
Colleagues, any further comments before I pass this on to second? This is a non-emergency reading of a first ordinance. It moves to second reading. And Carla, am I correct? Could you confirm we've completed the consent agenda?
Yes, that was all.
Very good. Our last item today is 866.
Authorize city attorney to appeal final opinion and order in Columbia Pacific Building Trades versus City of Portland Land Use Board of Appeals, number 2017-001.
Good morning.
Good morning, Mayor. Good morning, Commissioners. My name is Lindley Reese. I'm a Chief Deputy City Attorney with the City Attorney's Office. With me today is Lauren King, also a Deputy City Attorney. We'll make some brief comments, and then if you have questions after testimony, we'd be glad to take them. In December 2016, the City Council amended the zoning code to create a new use category called bulk fossil fuel terminals. That category limits the size of new fossil fuel terminals and the expansion of existing terminals. 4 parties appealed Council's decision to the Land Use Board of Appeals. And on July 19th, 2017, they reversed the city's decision, in part because they concluded that the city's regulations were unconstitutional. The City Attorney's Office believes that there's a reasonable basis for asking the Oregon Court of Appeals to reconsider LUBA's decision. By city code, we must ask this council to authorize the city attorney to institute such an appeal, and that's why we're here before you today.
Very good. Commissioner Fish?
Lindley, I have a question because, there's some lawyers in the room, but a lot of us sort of had some passing whatever with the quote dormant commerce clause, but now it's back and it's like the big issue. I want to just make sure I understand the framework here. So there are areas where we legislate that someone has said we're preempted from acting. And so we deal with that all the time. The state legislature or the federal government says we can't do something. That's very clear. This is different. This is an example where we did something and a reviewing body said under the Commerce Clause, what we did somehow unreasonably affects interstate commerce, and therefore what we did is unconstitutional. The effect is the same. It's in the first instance, we are told we can't do something, and in this instance, we're told that what we did is unconstitutional. But in effect, that's what we're dealing with here, right? This is an area where we have the right to legislate, but a single member of LUBA said that it runs afoul of the Dormant Commerce Clause and therefore is unconstitutional. And the question that you're asking us is, are we prepared to go to the Court of Appeals to challenge that ruling?
Both to challenge the determination under the Dormant Commerce Clause, as well as a couple of findings and evidentiary issues, which we're in the process of evaluating other areas to determine whether we'll appeal on those bases.
Okay, and the other question I wanted to ask is, we're always concerned about precedent. Now, I know that you often tell us that each LUBA decision stands on its own and is fact-bound. But it does seem to me the difference here is that the Dormant Commerce Clause analysis could represent a challenge to a lot of the regulating we're doing at the local level, where someone from outside of our community can claim that it somehow interferes with interstate commerce, and therefore try to limit our ability to legislate local community standards. Is that a fair comment?
It's a fair comment that folks may raise that. I think our argument would be typically in a case that the analysis is limited to the facts in that particular case. And so I don't think we certainly would be supporting the idea that it applies more broadly, but it's certainly possible that people could raise that argument.
And in fact, given that we have a rather ambitious climate agenda and a plan guiding our action, I mean, this particular issue could come up in the future on lots of these kinds of land use decisions where someone is challenging our action based on the Commerce Clause.
Yes, that is possible.
So we're really talking about a fundamental constitutional question that relates to our ability as local leaders to legislate. And I think that makes this qualitatively different than some of the other kind of LUBA rulings that we often hear about.
Yeah, it's unusual for the city to appeal a LUBA ruling.
Thank you.
From a practical standpoint, what is our policy while this is being appealed?
We're evaluating that at this time.
Very good.
Are LUBA members attorneys necessarily?
They are.
Okay.
They're appointed by the governor.
So Commissioner Fish made reference to one LUBA member, I guess.
In this particular instance, there are 3 LUBA members. 2 of the LUBA members recused themselves based on family member participation in the council proceedings.
And I'd just like to add the hilarious footnote that was reported in the press as a unanimous decision.
Yeah, really. That is baffling.
Typically, a one-person decision is.
A one-person decision.
And by the way,
Absolutely is. They could have said unilateral. Sorry.
You know, and colleagues, on that point, I mean, you know, it's certainly possible that all 3 members of LUBA could get it wrong from our point of view. But I do think that what makes this case unique is that we're talking about a fundamental constitutional question decided by a single member of LUBA, which could in the future significantly limit our ability to move forward with climate-related legislation. And I think the combination of a single person rendering a decision, and we are all as human beings fallible, and the consequences of that decision on things we are likely to do in the future makes this case ripe for appeal.
Yeah, and I appreciate Commissioner Fish's line of questioning. That certainly frames it for me and lays it out. So I appreciate the line of questioning you just went through. Colleagues, any further questions? Is there any public testimony on this item?
No one signed up.
Very good. There being no further comments or questions, this is a non-emergency. This is.
Resolution.
Oh. Please call the roll.
Saltzman?
Well, I do believe, especially in light of my new information, that this was decided by one person on LUBA, that we have more than ample grounds here to appeal this to the Court of Appeals. I guess my initial reaction when I first heard of the decision, the unanimous decision, was, you know, the Commerce Clause is a pretty high bar to cross. And certainly the Court of Appeals will, I'm sure, weigh into this after how long it takes them. I don't know, a year, 2 years. But it's an important issue. It does underpin, as Commissioner Fish said, many of our efforts to move forward on issues around climate change and many other issues where our residents are looking more to local governments for solutions than they're looking to the state or the federal governments because at least certainly with respect to federal government, there's just no leadership on climate change in the executive branch, period. So this is this is an appeal that needs to be taken forward, and I'm happy to support it. Aye.
Hugh Daly?
I'm also happy to support this appeal. My layperson's understanding of the Dormant Commerce Clause, I am not convinced that we're in violation of it. And I am also ready and willing to fight back against the state interfering in our ability to protect our environment and to protect our residents and make what we think are the best decisions for our city. We need them to set standards that protect people, not profit. Aye.
Fritz?
I agree with everything everybody else has said. Also, there's a long precedent of land use decisions made by the Land Use Board of Appeals being on land use issues and not constitutional law. So I agree that it's very crucial to get this sent up the ladder so that we can continue doing the work that we do, because this was a national precedent-setting legislation that we passed, and I'm proud to be part of it. Aye.
Fish?
I appreciate the conversation. Again, I think the fundamental question here is who gets to decide these questions? And under this ruling, greater weight is given to people who live outside of Portland than live inside Portland. And the precedent could be used to challenge many actions we are likely to take in the future to protect the safety and health of our residents, and it extends well beyond climate change. So I think it's very important that we appeal this decision. It reminds me a little bit of the debate around international treaties and the resistance that we've had nationally to some treaties where we have effectively ceded our sovereignty to neutral bodies in another country, and the net result is a diminution of labor standards, environmental standards, and other things. I think the consequence of this, and that may be a little overstated, is potentially a loss of sovereignty, local control over charting how we intend to respond to climate change. That makes this a very important question to appeal and to get clarity on the constitutional question. So I wholeheartedly support this appeal. Aye.
Wheeler?
I have three reasons why I will vote for this. Number one, I agree with those who have said that, overtly this impacts the work that we have already done to achieve our climate action goals. We need the ordinance in place. It was an important ordinance. The community came out in large numbers to speak in support of that ordinance, and they would expect us to continue to defend that ordinance. Number two, and I'm very appreciative again of Commissioner Fish's framing of this issue. He made a compelling case, which I agree with, that there is more at stake here than that important issue of climate change. And so that is a second reason why I think it is our duty to defend the ordinance. And the third reason is one that has been mentioned. I'm not going to pick on the poor one standing LUBA commissioner who had to make a difficult decision. They are volunteers, and I appreciate the decisions that they make, and they're always controversial decisions. But one commissioner's viewpoint is hardly a definitive opinion on this important issue. And therefore, I think we have a duty to go forward and defend the ordinance for that third reason as well. So I certainly support this. I vote aye. The resolution is adopted, and we are adjourned until 2 p.m. Thank you, everybody.